Hello, Catherine.
Hey, Jamie.
Where are you right now?
So right now I am outside of Denver in Evergreen, Colorado, which is where my parents recently moved to. And I'm in their basement. It's a, throwback to my youth, I guess, spending time in my parents' basement.
But that is not where home is for you, though, right now. You
That's
are,
right. So I normally live in New York City, and spent all but the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks of the pandemic in my apartment in New York with my dog, and have only very, very recently sort of temporarily relocated here. I'll be in Colorado for about the next month and a half, and then we'll head back to home in New York.
got it. So you're on like a great American road trip.
I am. I am on a Great American Road Trip. Oh, I guess I left that out. So I'm driving. You know this because I saw you in Indy at the council meeting, which was like stop one of the Great American Road Trip. So it was, let's see, New York to Columbus, Ohio for a night, to Indy, to Kansas City, to Denver, here working, then vacation up in national parks, which I'm super excited about. I've never been to Glacier, and so that's the first one I'm going to hit. Then Glacier, Yellowstone, Tetons, back to Denver, and then like hightail it back out east, swinging through Chicago, Cleveland, back home, all while wearing a mask, using hand sanitizer, staying as far away from other people as I can.
Excellent. So for context, I've been doing these interviews with our national council members, kind of as a follow-on to Coffee with the Council, which was really well received after convention, and people were like, oh, let's do more of that, and I want to get to know the council members. So in thinking about this new virtual environment, I was trying to figure out a way to kind of bring our council members to life and talk a little bit about their AST experience and their background. So got a whole bunch of questions for you, but really to kind of get to know you as a human being, right? Outside of, you're not an AST robot.
I am not, I swear.
So you have traveled all around the world. You have lived in a number of places, big cities like DC, and of course you live in New York now. Where is the longest place that you've ever lived?
So New York City is actually the longest place I've ever lived. It was a non-consecutive, let's see, so it's 2020. I moved to New York City for college in 2006. Yeah, 2006. I was there until 2009, so 3 years, and then moved back in 2011, and I'm, not technically still there now, but I do still have an apartment there. I'm still there now. And so that puts me at what, 12 years non-consecutively. I think that is the longest I've ever, and I've lived in my current apartment for 6 years, which I think is actually the longest I've ever lived like in one space.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where were you when you chose NYU? So why NYU, and like what part of the country were you living in? You're like, I'm going to New York, I'm going to NYU.
So I was living in the suburbs of Chicago, where I went to high school, and randomly got a mailer for NYU, like back when colleges just like cold mailed you things. So I got a glossy brochure for NYU. I'd already done an East Coast sort of college tour. I saw Boston and DC, and really loved those cities. I didn't stop in New York. I never thought about going to college there, but got this brochure. I had actually already decided to go to UT Austin, which is, not NYU. Very different. And my mom, who knows me very well, was like, I think you should just give NYU a shot. Like, let's just go take a look. We'll take a trip. So we did a quick trip out to New York. And I walked around the campus, and I went on a tour, and like immediately fell in love. I loved that everyone that I spoke to, every student like had something else going on. It was about the college experience, but part of the college experience was like interning at MTV or working in a bank downtown or just living in New York. And like, it was, something that I didn't know I was looking for, but like immediately latched onto. So where I was when I actually decided to go to NYU was on NYU's campus 2 days before like the official acceptances were due. So my mom and I walked over to the admissions office and like in person accepted my offer.
I love that.
But I was living outside of Chicago, and that trip to New York was my first time in New York, and then freshman move-in was my second time to New York City.
Wow. I wonder how many people the admissions office have accept in person.
I know, I should have asked, like, are you guys, this is a thing that happens a lot to people. I could see like a college like NYU, maybe people do go there and fall in love the way I did. But it's also kind of a weird, crazy thing to accept, like where you're going to go to college based on being there. But
yeah. Huh. Okay. So you said that you thought it was cool that people were involved in multiple things outside of just going to class. So why join the sorority as one of your extracurricular things?
So one of my really good friends from high school went to a large Midwestern school and joined a sorority, you know, like a big traditional, like has a house, sleeps in a room with a whole bunch of bunk beds with other girls, and was having a great experience. She was a year older than I was. And I was, you know, going to New York, like I said, I'd been to the school once. It's a school of 20,000 students. I didn't know anyone in New York. I don't think I knew anyone on the East Coast. And so I was really looking for community when I got there. And I was at a Chicago area, like alumni, welcome new students sort of send off thing, and met this young woman who was a rising senior, who was like very well put together, and just like seemed like she had it all together. She was the kind of woman that I was like, man, I hope when I'm a rising senior, like I seem as cool and collected and confident as she does. And I noticed that she was wearing like a little pin, and I knew nothing about Greek life, and asked her about it, and she said she was in a sorority. It was her sorority badge. And I was like, well, I don't even know NYU had sororities, but like, okay. So between my high school friend Liz and then this girl Heather that I met, I was like, this might be a thing to consider. Like, what's the worst that happens? Which is probably embarrassingly like too often my sort of metric for deciding things. But I was like, what's the worst that happens? Like, I go through recruitment and don't join an organization? Sure. So that was kind of why I initially looked. It was kind of again, like Heather seems super cool. My friend Liz really likes her sorority. So I might as well just show up to round robin and like see what happens.
And next thing you know, you're chapter president and living in the house.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. Next thing I know, I'm like holding positions, then chapter president. All of my closest friends from college are sorority chapter sisters. Like I've made friends sort of across our organization and across the generation. So definitely like way, 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 way better than, you know, what I was expecting to get into.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if you're going to do it, you just do it right. Go full in.
Right, exactly. Oh, and I should say that Heather, who I met and like truly did not remember a thing about her organization, and she told me, and I was like, yeah, whatever, that's a bunch of letters I don't remember, actually was an AST, which I didn't know until the end of recruitment.
Good job, Heather.
Yeah, I know.
Wow, we need to try and replicate that model, you know?
Seriously, like have people be at these like welcome student events
Yeah.
well before they even get to campus, and then everyone will be like, oh, who are those AST girls? They seem so like cool, confident, calm, collected. I want to be like them when I grow up, which was like why I joined AST.
I love that. Okay, well now you're that person for other women. Yeah. So what else did you do when you were at NYU? Clearly you had an academic program. What other things were you involved in there?
So I was on the mock trial team for a year, and actually went to nationals. And then so that was my freshman year. Sophomore year I was chapter president, and then in sophomore year I looked at my class credit and decided that I could actually graduate early. And so I did that, and so my senior year, kind of didn't have a junior year, My senior year, my third year was mostly just classes and like trying to get out the door.
And when you got out the door, you went straight to the Peace Corps?
I did.
Okay.
So once I realized I could graduate early, it was like, okay, this kind of gives me a little bit of time to play around. Like if I decide to go to grad school, and I graduated in the middle of the like Great Recession. I graduated in 2009. So grad school was looking like a really good option because there weren't that many jobs. But I was like, you know what, if I decide to go to grad school, at least this way I won't be so far behind my classmates if I do something like Peace Corps. So I looked at Peace Corps and Teach for America, and decided to only apply to Peace Corps on the thought being, if I got a Teach for America job in somewhere like New York or Chicago, I think it would have been a really hard offer to turn up just for like comforts of home. And I knew myself, and like, I am not a fifth grade math teacher. No, I should teach no children fifth grade math or really anything. Like I was sort of better suited to be a Peace Corps volunteer. And decided to sort of force myself into that at that time. Like, don't even give myself the option, just do Peace Corps. So I applied for Peace Corps right at the end of my second to last semester, so fall semester senior year, and was accepted. And the way Peace Corps worked, at least then, is you didn't find out where you were going until a few months before you left. So I graduated in May and was like, I'm going to the Peace Corps in August. No idea where I'm going. Somewhere in the world, probably somewhere that speaks French because I spoke French. But like beyond that, who knows? And then I found out in June that I would be going to Senegal. So then in August 2009, about 3 or 4 months after graduating, picked up and moved to West Africa.
So we could probably spend a whole hour talking about that experience. You served in the Peace Corps, but clearly you still had some sort of drive for getting another degree.
Yeah.
Had you just decided, like, were you thinking you were going to go into like the international, like foreign affairs space, not so much law school, or both? What was the thought process there?
I think if you had asked me in 2007, 8, or 9, if I would have gone to law school, I would have said no. And I actually did mock trial, like in college, not for law. I did public speaking in high school and wanted to continue that. So I did it more for the like acting, public speaking competition aspect, not for the law piece. So I had no intention on going to law school until I got to Peace Corps. And then I was working with local artists, and I was also working with young women, and realized that even though it was in entirely different spaces, the issues they both kept running up against were legal issues. For the young women, it was more of a law enforcement issue. There was a law in the books in Senegal that I think the age of marriage was like 15 or 16. So first off, that's a problem in and of itself. Like, that's a bad law. But the second issue is the law isn't even enforced in a lot of places. So a lot of the middle schoolers that I was working with were these incredibly like bright, driven women who had this constant fear of just like being married off because their family couldn't support them anymore, and being married off to someone much older, and sort of all of that comes with it. With the artists, on the other hand, they were doing really great work, but didn't want to expand their business too much because there were no intellectual property protections for them. So they were like, if I do something really great, like someone's just gonna steal it, so I'll just kind of stay in my little corner and be restricted. And while I was working there, I kept running into issues where I was like, there's gotta be a solution to this. And then I was like, oh, actually, and I sort of got to this place of maybe a functioning international legal system or domestic legal system would create a space for additional growth and development. So that's sort of how doing a girls' camp and like working with a local tailor who made purses got me back to New York and to law school.
I feel like I remember one of those purses. that you
I
carried for a
think
really
I
long time?
carried them for like 4 years, and
Yeah.
I still have a huge box of them in my apartment. So they're every so often, like I will just have a piece of random. I don't think I have any like Senegalese things random around here. My parents have a bedroom decorated with some baskets from an artist, but yeah, I have some hangovers from Peace Corps.
And have you been back to Africa since then?
I have not. I do want to go back, but it's tough because I want to go so many places, and so it's kind of hard to make the decision to go somewhere I've already been versus somewhere that I haven't been yet.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of being able to travel to Africa in 2018, and we went to 5 different countries. And it was, I'm gonna have to go back. I have to figure out a
Yeah,
way to go back. So, well,
yeah,
we
absolutely.
can plan on that. Maybe not, council or sorority related, but like normal
Right.
people whenever
Yeah,
we can
exactly.
travel. So I'm thinking about your AST ties that you graduated, so many interesting factors, and here you are today. You graduated early, you left the United States and were overseas, then you went to law school, right? How did you keep like the sisterhood alive during that time frame? Because this is a question that all of our members are facing right now, different reasons, but how did you find value in, and what did you do to keep that sisterhood alive during that time?
So I think if you had asked me then, I would have said, in Peace Corps, I wasn't super involved in the sorority just because of sort of where I was in time zones. And then when I got back, I started to get a little bit more involved. I served on the nominations committee. At one point, I served on the governing documents committee. I was a chapter advisor. I engaged in some of the strategic planning. And so sort of got back and like looked at what was going on and tried to figure out where I could best serve the organization. I think that's the answer I would have given. And it's all very true. Like that is what I did, and sort of how I stayed involved in the sorority. But when I think about it now, and when I think about the ways that I engage in our organization and like keep the sisterhood alive and sort of a daily part of my being, it is my national council role. It's my prior chapter advisor role. It's the nomination. It is all those roles. But it's also the fact that, like I alluded to, like all of my close friends are sisters, or almost all of them. And, I would be lying if I said before this, I didn't text them all what I was planning on wearing for this and ask them if it would work. Like, so that's a way that I engage sort of in the sorority on a daily experience. Like that's my group chain. That's my village. Those are the women who, starting since college, have celebrated every victory with me and then been there as support when I needed them. And like that's what the sisterhood is. That's sort of the daily bread of sisterhood outside of all of our volunteer experiences. So I think in keeping that perspective of like how I engage with our sisterhood every day has really brought AST home, and it keeps it close.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder that the sisterhood is not a chapter meeting. Like the sisterhood is not, an event, or what it is, the ties between the members on the off days, right?
Exactly.
That's the sisterhood. And you've shared with me and with others how the sisterhood has made such a huge impact on your life, especially as you and your family faced a pretty significant personal tragedy. If you're willing to talk about that a little bit, I think our sisters would be interested in knowing how the sisterhood was there for you when you really needed it.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So my brother passed away in fall 2017, and my mom actually called my best friend, who's a chapter sister, before she called me. And my friend walked over, was like at my apartment door when I found out. And then little did I know that chapter sister like organized everyone. There was sort of this outpouring. I really have no better way to describe it, but like outpouring of love and support for me and my family that my friend sort of funneled all of the communications. And I think that, you know, in addition to sort of my and my family's personal tragedy, like another good sister friend of mine, her father passed away in maybe 2015, 2016, and she framed it best, which was the yellow roses from sisters got to her mom's house before she could get home. And you know, so, and I had that exact same experience, that for me it was, my phone was blowing up with text messages from sisters who, because of the relationship we had, I knew that they didn't need me to like respond. They just wanted me to know that they were there and would be there for whatever it was, whether it was someone sent me brownies or sending a huge bouquet of yellow roses to the funeral and making a donation in my brother's honor, to like 10 women flying across the country to be there at the funeral. And I actually think that that's the moment. So, you know, it was 11 years after I joined the organization, probably almost pretty close to the day, maybe even to the month, because it was September and I joined in the fall of 2006. But I think that was the moment that my parents really got what our sisterhood is like seeing the number of women who are willing to just drop everything and travel across the country and just be present. And I mean, they're AST women, so they also like did a ton of stuff and like organized things and like drove people around and, you know, were buffers where buffers needed to exist, and made themselves useful. But it was in having those women there that, you know, I know what our sisterhood means, but really in that moment, sort of in losing my brother, but being surrounded by sisters, did I sort of really feel that aspect and that support. And even, I mean, beyond that, so like I said, they sent flowers and organized a donation, and I had asked Amy, who was sort of organizing everything, to give me a list of the names so I could write thank you cards. And it was women I had talked to every week, and it was women I hadn't talked to since college. And so it was just so much love and support from our members and my sisters that were really there for me and my family when we needed it.
Well, I wish not the circumstances whenever a tragedy strikes our members, and certainly so many, I can only imagine what our members are going through even right now, but just day-to-day life, you know, navigating life. I wish we could kind of bottle that sentiment up, and sprinkle it around, because I think a lot of people feel like they're alone or they're going through something, you know, that no one else has ever gone through. And that may be true, but to know that you have sisters near and far who maybe you speak to every day or you don't, who are thinking about you, I think it really helps. I think it makes a big difference. And especially now when we're all stuck at home or we're not able to socialize in the way that we want to reinforce those relationships, we've got that sense of belonging. We offer that in the organization, right? We offer that sense of belonging that I think people are craving. Mm-hmm. But how do you articulate that? How do you talk about that? So I don't necessarily have the answer, but I do think having our members share their stories and talk about what the sisterhood means for them, and then how they've paid it forward, I think is important. And I know, just based on the number of weddings that I feel like you've been to, you've bought your own like white tuxedo, right?
I did. I'm very excited for ritual. Like the second that rule changed at convention, I was like, I'm ready for it.
But you pay it forward to your sisters too, right? In any number of different ways. So I appreciate you sharing that, but certainly that you carry that feeling, that sentiment with you, and then you pass it on. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I think like you said, like the belonging is what we offer. Like that's what sisterhood is. Sisterhood is family. Sisterhood is someone who loves you for your flaws. You know, they are there with you for sort of the good parts and the bad parts. And I hope that in light of everything that's going on, our members can find themselves turning inward and turning to our organization and turning to their other sisters for like support in the bad times and tough times, and like a good laugh or, you know, Instagram meme share when they need like a pick me up.
Yes, definitely that. And then I think about, you have a pretty demanding job. You are a night owl.
I am.
And I'm not casting any judgment here, but it is a fact. You are a night owl. And you've been at a law firm, for one law firm for some time, and you're kind of working your way up through the ranks. Are there things that you have learned through the sorority experience that you use day to day in your professional life? Like, how do you translate that?
Absolutely, 100%. Like so as you said, I'm kind of early mid-career, I don't know, you know, somewhere up the thing, at a law firm. And I think the biggest thing that I've taken from sorority is how to work in groups, like actively and healthily towards one goal. And I'm working on a lot of teams right now, and I think getting a lot of positive feedback from the senior people I'm working with, but more important to me, from the junior people that I'm working with, about sort of the way that I create team dynamics and let them, you know, flow. And we talk a lot at council about the 5 dysfunctions of a team model. And that's something that I have really internalized, and I try and approach with, you know, all of my sort of small teams and big teams at work, which is how can I create functioning teams, especially using this 5 dysfunctions model. And I would be remiss to say Zoom. Like, we've been doing council calls on Zoom since way before I joined, and I joined council in 2017. And I feel like I'm a Zoom pro now. Like, the pandemic happened, and I was like, I've got this. I'm so good at Zoom.
Yes, I believe with the organization was way ahead of its time when we adopted.
I think so.
Yeah, I feel like that's good. So you're a night owl, you work a lot of hours. I have certain opinions about this concept of work-life balance, which I'm happy to share. But I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are right now. You said you're an early to mid-career professional at your firm. You know, it's a, you know, there's, being a law firm is different than, you know, working in a hospital is different than being a teacher, right? So, you know, it's not apples to apples. But does work-life balance exist? What does that look like for you? How do you kind of dial it back, or like, can you step away? How do you do that?
So I would be interested to know your thoughts on work-life balance at a different time. I won't derail like our hour to get into this, but one of my work mentors actually framed it this way, and I really like the way that she did, and so I'm adopting it, which is that there is no such thing as work-life balance, but I promise the message gets like lighter. It's all a matter of triaging, and it's a matter of saying like, what is most important to me right now and what is not, and then ordering sort of that way. And then it's kind of a constant flow. I think it's much easier for me to say that because I don't have children. I have like a small dog who's somewhat demanding, but like definitely not as demanding as a child or multiple children would be. But I think that, you know, sort of being flexible with it all when I can be, and then being rigid when I need to be, is sort of the way that I strike balance. So I'm a night owl. Like, I just function better after, I won't say the hour, it's very late. Like, my brain just works better when the sun's down. And so what that means for me is, for council calls, like, that's a rigid thing. I have that blocked off on my calendar. I am busy. Work, sorry, too bad. Like, that's a set time. But when I'm doing, you know, sort of interim, like task force work, or maybe something that's a little more one-on-one, working with one person on council and the ball's sort of in my court, where I can kind of work alone on something, or I'm doing correspondence, like that'll happen much later in the evening, because I can be flexible with my schedule. And I can say, I need to get my work done now, and I'll turn to sorority like right before I go to bed. And that actually is one of the things that sort of helps me wind down, is not focusing on work and focusing on, what I refer to now as my extracurricular. So like being able to do AST stuff and sort of think about our members and engage in that space, like helps my brain turn down. And then my other work-life balance thing is when I take vacation, I go to places where there's not good internet. So I told you earlier I was going to Glacier National Park. Like that's an example of like I send an email that's like I don't know. I'm gonna be in a park. I'm gonna be hiking. Who knows if there's even internet in Montana? Really? Sorry guys, get it all in before I go. Like otherwise I'll be back.
So I saw your setup. So we had our council orientation in mid-August in our headquarters in Indianapolis, socially distanced, of course. So you've got your phone and your laptop, and you have a little black book, and you have Post-it notes, and then you may have another note. You have another notebook. That's your AST notebook. What are your like productivity kind of organizational tools, habits, hacks, anything you want?
So I am a big fan, and this is like my number one piece of unsolicited advice that I give to new law firm associates. I'm a big fan of, if given the option to have two cell phones, like to have a personal phone and a work phone, to do that. I like what I refer to as my separation of church and state. I like the fact that my work phone, for example, never goes into my bedroom, because I don't want to wake up and the first thing I see in the morning to be like that little blinking light. Like I want at least to be able to walk 10 feet across my tiny apartment and have a moment to myself, in the same way that if I went to a Beyonce concert now years ago with friends and like didn't bring my work phone because I wasn't going to be working at a Beyonce concert. And so I just like to be able to have that piece of separation. But as you mentioned, I even brought it as a visual, as a show and tell. I do have my little black book, which is a calendar. These are unfilled pages, and each page, this is actually our council meeting day. Each page is a different day, and I use Post-it notes sort of at the end of the week to like tally full week tasks, like things that I know I need to catch up on by the end of the week, but that aren't immediate, and then sort of do my daily to-dos on this. And then like you said, laptop, I use Post-it notes for notes, usually in my sorority notebook. On one page, I'll do my actual meeting notes, and on the other page, I'll kind of just jot down like free thoughts or responses I have to kind of keep track of them. But that's my main. And then another way I turn off at night is I sometimes will make my to-do list for the next day, because it just helps me to like get it all out there, get it on paper, and not go to bed thinking about like, oh, I need to remember to do this tomorrow. I need to remember to do this.
Yeah, that makes sense. So are there things, do you have that like mental, if you don't get it all out, does that keep you up at night? Like your brain is turning and churning?
I think one of the reasons I'm such a night person is because I'm horrible at falling asleep. So often I'm like, whatever, I'll just keep working, which like comes around, bites you in the morning. Not a good system, do not recommend. I think in terms of sorority, what keeps me up at night is the health and safety of our members. Like as I'm sure everyone going back to college or with college age students right now, like I am constantly thinking about how impossible it must be or must seem to be a college student, let alone a college freshman. And so I'm thinking about that. And then I think with work, it's just the standard to-do list of like, okay, what's a holdover from today? Can I actually get it done tomorrow? What's on my calendar tomorrow? Ooh, did I prepare for that meeting? That sort of running list of things.
Yes, adulting.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
But so then how do you stay motivated, right? So you, to me, seem very disciplined and focused, right?
I appreciate that.
So, whatever is going on the inside or below the surface, not for me to know, but how do you like kind of sustain that, and how do you stay motivated? Like what motivates you to get out of bed in the morning at whatever time that is after you've stayed up until whatever time you stay up?
Yep. I will leave those as whatever times. I appreciate that. So when I was growing up, I should say when I was living at home the first time, before this time living at home, pretty much every day when I would go to school, my mom would like send me off by saying, go make the world a better place. That just was like her parting words. And that's really stuck with me. My modification for Peace Corps was Peace Corps is going to change my life no matter what. And so if I can do one good thing that changes one person's life in a positive way, like that's a net benefit. That's an overall positive to me being here. And I think that sort of general approach is still the one that I use. That's kind of what I think of when I, get up in the morning, whatever time it is in the morning. It is in the morning, I swear. I do have a job that requires me to be at a desk, or used to require me to be at a desk at a certain time. But sort of the thought of like, how can I make the world just a little better? And maybe, on a crummy day, it's just like a small act of kindness to a stranger, or it's a text to a friend that sort of reinforces that bond and builds that community. But, on a better day, it might be sort of a bigger change. I think that's also, when I do my sorority work, what motivates me is a twist on that, which is how can I make today better for our members, or how can I make tomorrow better for our future members and our current members? So I think that's sort of the framework that I'm working towards, or try to work towards most days, which is just like, how can I put a little bit more good into the world than there was yesterday? Plus, I love a good challenge. My friends call them law puzzles. When they like give me a complex thing to solve, like I like the feeling of like solving a good problem.
Okay. A little satisfaction from solving a complex problem. I like that.
Yeah.
So that actually kind of speaks to you as a leader, and you talked about kind of 5 dysfunctions of the team and managing teams. What have you learned about yourself as a leader? Maybe 2-part question, one from AST experiences and maybe another from like your professional life experiences.
So I think if my coworkers and council members got together, they would all talk about how I like to talk things out. Like I'm a chatty person. It was really, I had a big problem being work from home full time at the beginning, because I am the queen of just like picking up the phone, getting on the phone, solving the problem, banging it out, moving on. And then finally I got used to just dialing people in Microsoft Teams and like having that same experience. So in terms of like my processing, I think that that's one thing that I've learned, both from sorority and from work, is like that's the way that I like to sort of solve those complex problems in, as a team, kind of working through issues, but I process things out loud and like to hear from other people. In terms of sort of just general leadership, I think one of the things that I've recently learned about myself is sort of where you started this, which is what motivates me. And it's that I am most motivated when I feel a connection to our members. And so, this has been tough. It's been tough for all of us in a variety of ways. And one of the things that's been hard for me is I don't feel like I'm getting to connect with our members as much, at least not in the ways that I want to. Like I wish that I could pop by some of the, NYIT's like recruitment, or see them afterwards, or like, it's sort of that in-person engagement with our members that I don't feel like I'm getting as much. Luckily, I've had a blast doing TAW Talks. And like, you could not keep me away from those. And so I do feel, there is an opportunity in all of this, which is now sort of the geographic limits don't exist anymore. And so we can connect with members across boundaries that are a little bit farther. Some people may know this, like I don't have a car, I barely drive, so I'm really restricted to like what's within subway distance, which is like 3 chapters, 4 if you're willing to really expand. And so it has been nice to be able to connect with people virtually, but I've learned that I need to make sure I'm doing that to kind of keep the core purpose of all of this, rooted in my leadership and volunteership.
Yeah, that's something I felt and people have shared with me is not having convention to kind of recharge your AST batteries has been hard on a lot of people. And I don't know, how to replace that sensation. But I agree. I get that energy from talking to our members and hearing their stories, and it just reaffirms like why we're willing to give our time, right, to the organization.
Absolutely.
And I think too about all of the things that I've learned from our members, even just in the last 6 weeks for me since virtual convention. It's just impressive, right? And how can we do a better job of telling our members' stories, or enabling our members to tell their own stories, or recognizing our members for what they're doing. But this gives us a great opportunity to figure out new ways to do that.
Absolutely. And I've picked up Katherine Onyshko, fellow council member, shared with me that she slides into chapters DMs. And I've started to pick that up because our members are doing really amazing things, and I love seeing it. And I want them to know that I'm cheering them on. So unfortunately, I don't have an AST handle. I am probably just some creepy, slightly older lady direct messaging chapters. So I promise if I do it, well, one, I hope you all accept the message and read it. But two, usually I will preface a little bit with who I am, so I'm not just a garble of letters and numbers messaging you.
That's pretty funny. Yes, I think our chapters have done an amazing job with establishing their virtual presence through social media. So I'll be interested to look back over time, after this academic year, and see kind of what worked and what were some best practices that and maybe what didn't work. I don't know. What are some things I should stop doing?
I don't know. I'm sure no director of social media in our chapter wants to look at my personal Instagram account, which I don't think I've posted a story to, or I've posted a picture to in 6 months. So,
and you're on the Great American Road Trip, and so you should be posting more.
I know exactly. I'm just so bad at it.
Irreverent road signs, funny
large
things.
Fine, I know.
Yeah, biggest knitting needles.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of opportunity.
Maybe on the next leg of the journey.
I hope so. I hope in the national parks you can, take some pics and share America with your followers.
Definitely.
I would appreciate that. I'm thinking too about your AST network. You have horizontal, vertical networks, I think, in AST. And you've often talked about people who have been mentors for you. Can you share kind of the importance of having mentors and maybe some things that you've learned from some of your AST mentors?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you sort of mentioned this, I feel like I'm learning a lot from our collegiate members every time I engage with them. And so that's, non-traditional mentoring, but is one way that I sort of get information about what's going on and sort of try to stay current, at least with the concerns and issues going on in our chapters. But in the sort of more formal mentoring structure, I just feel really lucky to have made the connections that I made early in my AST experience. I feel really lucky that I met Chris Covington at convention 2008, and sort of when I was the chapter president, and have stayed connected with her since, because I've gotten to have 12 years, if my math is right, of that mentorship and sort of level of engagement. I didn't, and that's what I'm it's not that I came to it later in my AST journey. I just feel really lucky that I've been able to be involved with the organization and meeting excellent women throughout the journey. I think one of the most important points thus far in my ongoing AST experience is, I met Tiffany Street, former national president, and connected with her and sort of stayed in touch and stayed engaged in a few different things and volunteered for some things. And it was, Tiffany sort of taught me two really important things, or has so far taught me two important things. Knowing her, I will continue to learn from her, I'm sure. One of them was the value of telling someone that you believe in them, because she did that to me. And I do not think that I would have applied for council in 2017 had she not, with a third party view, sort of said, if you think you're ready, I think you might be, maybe you should look into doing this. And so that's something I've tried to carry forward. I've tried to make sure that I'm encouraging women, whether it's the right time for them to step up to a certain role, or if it's, okay, if this is something you're interested in, let's talk about how to get you prepared for that role. Or if it's something you're interested in, but maybe not a good fit, like, let's talk about how to get you somewhere where you want to be and we'll have a great member experience volunteering for the organization. So that's the first important thing she taught me. And I think it's just a general lesson in mentorship and what mentors can provide. And then the other thing that I learned once I was on council from her is what leading with our values means. I think she approached everything in this organization throughout her entire experience, I can say for the last 3 years of working with her, through the lens of our values. And how does this help our women? And does this align with our values? How do we make sure we do this with a values forward approach? And that's something I've learned and I try to incorporate and try to think back on. I think when I'm making a decision for council, I think first off, how does this impact our members? And then the second is does this align with our values? And if not, how do we get it there? Or let it go.
So I've seen a lot of the social media polls on what's your favorite AST symbol.
Yes.
I'm not going to ask you that. I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite AST value, or what resonates the most with you?
So I normally say connections, because that is, like I said, what motivates me. But I'm going to switch it up, because I'm really thinking about it. I actually think I have to go with excellence. I love the phrasing of a disdain for mediocrity. I love the thought, the idea behind excellence to me isn't being the best, but it is trying to work towards that. It's seizing opportunities and looking for opportunities. And I think that that's something really unique. And, we talk about instilling skills in women to help them succeed and excel in life. And it's that idea, we're not saying come to the table and be the best you. We're saying let's help you get there. Let's try to have members who are looking for ways to succeed or grow and learn. And kind of bringing this back to why I joined AST, it's because the women that I saw in the recruitment room were women that I wanted to be like. They were confident and they were clever and they had a really strong sisterhood bond and they had cool internships and they were taking classes that seemed interesting. And I walked into the room and thought, man, I would be so lucky to call these women my sisters, because they are kind of who I want to grow up to be. And I am. I am lucky enough to call them my sisters, and I'm still really good friends with a lot of those women. And it's sort of that value of excellence that drew me to the organization. So I have to go, that's what I have to go with.
Okay, that's fair. So what advice then would you give to women who are thinking about, is this for me? Should I sit this out? Should I go through virtual recruitment? Why should they say yes? Why should they take a chance?
I mean, I'll say what I thought when I started, what's the worst that happens?
What's the worst that could happen? Really?
What's the worst that could happen is that you spend maybe an hour on Zoom that you could have been watching TV during or whatever. The worst case is hopefully not that bad. The best case is amazing. If you do a risk reward calculus, it's a pretty low risk for a potentially really high reward. And then in terms of like how to pick an organization, I will say the advice that I got from my friend Liz, who I mentioned, which was like, who do you want to call your sisters? You know, what's the organization that you want to have that sisterly bond with? What are, you know, who are those women? So my advice is, what's the worst that could happen? And the best thing is you like find a huge group of sisters across the nation.
Yes, to all of those things. Thank you, Catherine. What advice would you go back and give your 19-year-old self? So when you were elected president, were you a sophomore?
I was a sophomore, yeah.
Yeah. So what would you tell your sophomore self, if you could?
I would remind my sophomore self that being a leader of our sorority is a lot different, I think, than being a leader of any other organization. I'd been class president and other stuff in high school, but the difference is sisterhood. And the difference is like the group of women will be there to support you, and they love you, and like take it as a time, you know, find comfort in that, and take it as a time to try different things and to grow as a leader. I think that's one of the most valuable things I got from my college experience, was that leadership development in a safe environment. You know, like I knew that I wasn't going to get kicked out of the sorority if I like ran a crappy chapter meeting. Though there may be women who wish that that had been true after a few like particularly bad chapter meetings. But I knew that I could like grow and develop those skills as a leader. Or at least looking back, I think I've identified that. So to our chapter leaders and women out there looking to step into those roles, I would say do it. Like this is the perfect space to start practicing and working on those skills.
So you came on the council in 2017. Are there some things that you look back and you're like, wow, I'm really proud of this moment or this accomplishment, not your accomplishment, but organizationally or from the council? When you look back on that, what comes to mind?
So a small thing and a big thing. I am personally really proud that we've increased the chapter GPA requirements. I think if we talk about values like intellect and excellence, we have to set our women up for it. And I remember how challenging it was to be a full-time student and actively engaged in the organization. And so I think we should set our women up for success. And so I am proud, though maybe this will get me, you know, I'm not on Twitter, so no one can roast me on Twitter. But maybe I'll get some blowback from that. But I do think that it sort of puts our values front and says, intellect and excellence are our values. I also don't think we're doing our members any service if they're graduating, you know, not ready to excel and like get the job that they want or do what they want in their career. The other thing is the recent strategic goals. I think it's excellent that we're focusing on creating a healthy and safe space for our collegiate women. And I can't wait to see like how that develops over the next few years.
Yeah, I like how all of the things tie together and build on each other. And I think that healthy, safe, values-based sisterhood is the answer to a lot of the dysfunctions that we all have in our chapters, in our organizations, in different groups and teams. And so figuring out how to unlock the magic, right, to make that possible, I think is going to be really exciting. And I'm glad you mentioned those two things, because they're unique and they do actually speak to excellence as your preferred value today. You didn't mention, and I'm not saying this negatively, but you didn't mention the Women's Wellness Initiative, which is something that has largely come about during the time and developed during the time that you've been on the council. Can you talk about your experience with women's wellness and maybe experience that you've had with our service partners?
Yeah. So the Women's Wellness Initiative was established before I came on council, but since I've been on council, it's been a lot of work with Dress for Success and then bringing on Girls Who Code. I'm really excited to get involved with Girls Who Code. I know that they're doing a lot of virtual things now, so I think this is going to be, you know, they're sort of seizing this opportunity, and I hope our members engage with that, alumni, collegiate members, etc. My experience has been with Dress for Success. I actually volunteered for Dress for Success way before it was an AST service partner, because it just seems like an area that I could like do something good in and maybe provide some helpful skills. And I love it. I think it's a great organization. I've had a blast volunteering with them, whether it was that prior experience or we volunteered with them for some council meetings. Their CEO is phenomenal. So yeah, I love our service partners. I also love seeing the way that our different chapters and alumni are engaging with the Women's Wellness Initiative and are, you know, tackling different pieces of the wheel and sort of like making it their own. I think one of the biggest successes that I've seen is I was speaking to a woman, a recent college grad, who was looking at making a career change and said that she reflected on the Women's Wellness Wheel to sort of map out her priorities and where her needs were being met and where they weren't being met.
Wow.
And I think even that is like such an innovative, clever way to use, you know, yes, service and philanthropy is external, but also like we all need to make sure that we're all doing fine. We can't be volunteering for these organizations if we're not up to it. And so I love that she did that.
Yeah, that makes my list of like, what do I like doing? What do I think I'm good at? And what other people tell me I'm good at seem kind of lame in comparison. So I love that idea. Yes. Yeah. I'm glad that we're providing a tool that is relevant and that is being used by members in their daily life.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot on council about decision making, how we think, how we make decisions. And so for me to have the framework of the organizational values, right, our mission and our vision, the framework of the Women's Wellness Initiative, and then you overlay our ritual on top of that, it really are those it's the guideposts, right?
Yeah.
It's the path. It's the if you're doing these things, if you're following this path in your own way, whatever that looks like, right, you are bound to contribute your share, right, to the progress of humankind, mankind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that that's exactly it, you know, sort of, and then they all fit together, right? They're not dissonant pieces. Like they all overlap and they fit, and that's what, you know, makes us an organization. That's what makes us unique.
Yeah. So we're getting close to an hour, but I have some like quick fire, rapid fire questions. Okay. So you're on the Great American Road Trip. Yep. However, what other places are on your travel wish list?
So this summer I was supposed to go to France to see the beaches of Normandy. I'm a huge history buff. I studied history and econ in undergrad, and I always joke econ was for a job, history was for fun. So I would like to do that trip that I canceled and see, like, you know, more World War II sites. I also really, really want to go to Japan. I just think that'd be like so cool. So at some point in the future, hopefully.
Okay. And when you travel, what are some of your like best travel tips, travel hacks, must-haves when you travel?
So I like make little outfits and then lay them out and then roll them all up into little balls. And I think that actually you can do it in a way that your clothes don't wrinkle and then it packs pretty neatly. I'm trying to think of other good, I carry everything on. I don't even own a suitcase larger than a carry-on. I kind of figure, yeah, like I am the queen of like, this is a neutral enough shirt. I can wear it with a few different bottoms and like call it a few different outfits, you know, like a necklace or two will really change something up. So And you can always do laundry. If you're gone for long enough that you need to do laundry, like you can find it.
And are you a pre-check or clear person?
I am a pre-check person. I almost got clear right before the pandemic. I'm actually glad I didn't. But yes, I am a pre-check person.
Okay. What was your first job after college?
So my first job after college was Peace Corp.
Okay. So did you ever work in retail or food service?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So in high school, I was an after-hours secretary at a local real estate office.
Okay.
So I would come in after school when the secretary would leave, and then I would sit and answer phones and make like open house sheets. And I actually did the ads in the for the Sunday paper, which I cannot believe they trusted me to. I was a 16-year-old to be making like house ads. But then my summer after my freshman year of college, I worked at Cold Stone.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I think I had like really great biceps that summer.
I bet you do. That's awesome. I really feel like working in retail or in food service in some way, or even, working in an office, I mean, that just provides some real life experience and is very humbling. So
I definitely think so. Yeah.
yeah, I learned a lot from those jobs. And thinking about like customer service also is what I learned from a lot of those jobs, which I feel like relates to what we do now and to some extent to serve other people. When you are like performing at your peak, when you're totally crushing it, what are you doing?
I think it's usually working in a group towards like a common goal. And I said I like complex problems. I think that's it. Like I like breaking really challenging things down into their core components and like figuring out what you're missing to solve the problem and then rebuilding it. And that's a lot of what I do kind of in my current job. I also, on the more concrete side, like if I'm performing at my peak, it is because my calendar is full. Like I have no space to slack off because I am the queen of like, oh, I had a few hours to get something done. Like I'll just like walk my dog or hang out with my dog or like bake an elaborate cake. And then, you're like, oh my gosh, I have an hour left to do this thing. And so if I have a more sort of compact day where I need to get a lot done, like that's a more productive day for me.
Got it. Okay. And then 2 more questions. What is the last book that you read?
So I have a Goodreads account and I never update it, which is not great. I am pretty sure the last book I read was probably Becoming by Michelle Obama, I think.
Okay. And podcast recommendations. What kind of podcasts are you into? What would you recommend?
So I listen to super nerdy podcasts. This Land is a really good podcast about a Supreme Court case that actually just was decided maybe a month ago. And it's about a dispute over Native American territory in Oklahoma. Spoiler alert, the Supreme Court ended up ruling for Creek Nation. And it sort of is going to be interesting to see how all of that shifts out. So that was really good. And I feel like I learned a lot about something that I didn't know anything about. I also listen to What a Day most days, which is like a 20-minute, or The Daily from the New York Times, which is like a 20-minute sort of, here's the news you need to know. And then I'm super old school and don't actually listen to that many podcasts, but I listen to the radio. And I listen to WNYC, which is my local like news station,
I love it.
almost every single day, including when I'm traveling, actually. So even when I'm traveling for business or like here in Colorado, they have their own public radio. I will still stream WNYC from my phone.
That's awesome. And one last surprise question.
Okay.
If you could do any talk, what would be your topic? Dream talk.
Okay.
You've already done cooking with Katherine, right?
I've done cooking with Katherine, and like I didn't cook because my kitchen's very small. We just talked about food. So I did a talk that was just like fun conversation games. And that was really, really fun because it was like almost like that college experience of like screwing around in the sorority house. Like that. So that was fun. Maybe I would do something like that again. I spent a lot of this summer gardening, and I think, maybe that kind of like we could all show off what we've grown, or like talk through the heartache of planting things. Like I planted cucumbers and they looked great, and then one day they all died. Like 12 cucumber plants just all died at once, and that was a tough day in my house.
The heartache of gardening.
Yeah.
Garden of heartache. I feel like there's something there.
I think so. Maybe coming to a Zoom near you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for doing this. It's really good to talk to you.
Yeah, this was a blast.